All right, guys, good to have you here today. We're going to talk about some student and flight instructor tips to help you with your flight training. Appreciate you taking the time to come out today. I want to start by saying everything I'm about to share with you is just my opinion, okay? And it doesn't make it right or wrong. A lot of the ways I talk about this stuff, it's probably going to sound like I'm saying you're doing something wrong. Just know that I have my opinions. They come from my experience. And I do want to do everything in alignment with the FAA standards, the FAA handbooks. So if I say something today, especially if I misspeak, I say ground speed when I should have said, true airspeed or something like that, please correct me on the spot. So let's make sure we get it recorded properly on the video. But if I just share a technique that you don't necessarily agree with, that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. My job or my objective today is to help you be successful, help you be even more successful than you would be without today's meeting. And by success, what I'm looking at is helping you be more effective in your flight training and more efficient. So by improving or increasing effectiveness and efficiency, hopefully you guys are able to, we got some background noise there, are you able to mute that? Thank you, or just have everybody mute. Cool, we're broadcasting this online as well, so anyone who's watching on the other camera, thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys. If you can mute out, that would be awesome. All right, so effectiveness and efficiency. And the challenge, there's a lot of challenges in aviation and in flight training. One of the challenges is instructor turnover. We've seen that at this school just in the last year. And the way the system overall is designed is that instructors get to a certain point, they go off to the airlines, we bring in the new instructors. So we're constantly having these conversations and these discussions about technique and things that will make your training more effective and efficient. It would be nice if someone wrote a book about this, right? The FAA has done an okay job. They've got their books that explain maneuvers and things. But I only know of one book. There's a few that touch on some things, but the one I'm going to recommend to you today is Instructional Methods for Flight Instructors by Gordon Henrie. The website is imfi.net. So that would be worth checking out. As in Instructional Methods for Flight Instructors, imfi.net. And Gordon actually was a mentor of mine. He was a DP that did a few of my check rides back in the early 90s. And he worked as a flight instructor on this campus for Lufthansa. And back then, I was working to become a professional flight instructor. And just to give you a little tidbit of how things have changed since the late 90s, back then, to become a flight instructor at Lufthansa, the minimum was 2,000 hours to be a flight instructor. Okay, and usually people had 3,000 or 4,000 hours before they made it to the airlines during that time. So things have changed a little bit, but you can imagine the amount of experience that the typical flight instructor had, especially at a place like Lufthansa. And I was blessed to learn some things when the check ride was over, and he was a great mentor to me. And about the time I became a flight instructor, he wrote this book. You can go to that website right now and get a PDF copy for like 29 bucks. The subtitle is "And Ways for Rated Pilots to Improve Themselves," or something like that. So it's not just for flight instructors. It's really for anyone that wants to be a better pilot. Some of what I'm going to share with you today is the stuff that Gordon talks about in this book. And I will tell you, it's a little bit outdated. He is still alive, but far past retirement. And when I say outdated, the stuff that really matters is timeless. It'll never be outdated. But he refers to the PTS instead of the ACS, things like that, okay? Not a big deal. It's still an extremely valuable book, and I recommend it to all you guys. But that book, and what I'm going to share with you today, represents things that come from experience as a flight instructor. And you guys have some very experienced instructors here, but just to kind of put it in perspective, most of what I'm going to share with you today, I learned after I had 2,000 hours of dual given. Okay? You don't have many flight instructors that are actively teaching that have 2,000 hours of dual given. It just doesn't happen in today's environment, which is part of the challenge. So it's the turnover and it's the overall lack of experience. It's nobody's fault. I'm not upset at anyone. I'm happy that people are moving on to their careers. I know that I'm the enigma wanting to be a career flight instructor. I'm the oddball for having 4,000 hours of dual given. Like, okay, I get it. But there are things we can do. The good news is it doesn't take 2,000 hours of dual given to learn this stuff. You can actually learn it by coming to meetings like this. I just want to put it in perspective that this stuff is important. This stuff is valuable. And to help kind of set it up, I'm going to share a concept with you that someone taught me years ago, and I call it circles of truth. And this can be applied to life. It can be applied to aviation, flight training, understanding God, understanding the universe, whatever you want to call it. Starting in the center represents not knowing anything about something. Okay, so we'll just stick with flight training. So you start here, we all start in the same place, don't know what's going on. And then you learn and you grow and you move out. So each circle, as you move out from the center, represents understanding more, understanding things better, understanding things more accurately. And that's how we all learn and grow, right? It's part of what makes flight training exciting. Here's the interesting part. When we are here in our progress on any given topic, and we hear something or read something or experience something that's out here, one of two things happens. Either it just goes right over our head and we don't even realize we experienced it because we weren't ready for it, right? It just goes in one ear and out the other, as the saying says. Or we consciously and adamantly disagree, even though it's true. But we're not to that point in our progression yet. Does that make sense? So I'm going to share some things. You know, some of you are just working on your private, and I'm going to be talking about commercial level stuff. Don't feel bad. Hopefully this video turns out and you can come back and watch it in a few months. Okay? Again, if I misspeak and say something inaccurately, like I told you guys before we turn the cameras on, go ahead and correct me. That's fine. I'm not perfect. But I want you to remember this, that we're all growing. We're all learning. We're all in this together. But just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean it's not true. You just might not be to that point yet. Is that fair? And I think that's important just to kind of have a perspective for where we're coming from with this. All right, hopefully these markers will work for me. That is a nice dry erase board. I do like that. All right, let me keep track of my notes here. Any questions so far? You guys are welcome to ask questions. We can keep this casual. I'll repeat it for the microphone. All right. So you guys should all know about my website, FlywithJim.com. You know I have a checkride preparation page. And on that checkride preparation page, I have what's called Jim Pittman's Observations and Suggestions. I know it's a long title, but I wanted to name it what it is. It's just my observations and suggestions. It's not Jim Pittman says this is the only way to fly. It's not, this is every good technique in the world. No, it's just my observations and suggestions. For short, I call it my notes. And I've got a notes document for the private and commercial, and I've got one for the instrument. I still think that there's a lot of people, a certain percentage of people who think they should only study those notes if they get assigned a check ride with me. And I would suggest to you that that is a lost opportunity. Those notes are for everyone. They're for the new instructors that are trying to figure out what they're doing. They're for the old instructors that would like some new techniques. They're for everyone. Whether you're scheduled for a check ride with me or not, please take the time to go study the notes. And I don't just mean read through it, but click on the links, go to the resources, watch the videos. I know there's a lot there. And that's part of why I'm emphasizing this, is because if you only get 5 or 6 days notice that you're scheduled on a check ride with me, that's not enough time, okay? It's like eating an elephant.
The link that you had on slip and skids, that was very helpful for me.
Very good. She said the link for slips and skids. I think that was a video that, what's his name? The DP out in Texas.
And the other one with the lady that does spins?
Yep. Yep, very good. So lots of good stuff on there. So I just wanted to put in a plug. Again, FlywithJim.com.
This camera just stopped recording.
I'm not going to worry about it. It might have just timed out.
Yeah.
So, but thank you. the checkride notes are not just for people scheduling checkrides with me. Please check it out. So FlywithJim.com, and then look for checkride resources. And I've got links to all kinds of stuff there. And I'll be referring to some of that maybe here as we go. All right. So one of the main things I want to share with you today are what could be called exercises or drills. Not to be confused with what we're looking for on a check ride. Most check rides, especially the instrument check ride, is all about real life. We're simulating a trip. We're going somewhere. We're flying the airplane from A to B. Drills and exercises are to build skills, okay? Skill building exercises. And one of them that I think you guys need to do more is instrument pilots flying IFR VMC. And you're like, well, that sounds easy. It's not as easy as you might think. And I think the reason we're having a problem, first of all, the symptom of the problem that I'm seeing is, and I make it clear in my pre-flight briefings for an instrument check ride, I let you know when you're in the clouds, I let you know when you're out of the clouds. Those foggles, those are clouds, okay? And I think what's happening is the instructors are like, well, you're already a private pilot, you know how to fly visually, let's just really focus on teaching you to fly in the clouds. Okay, that's important. What's also important is flying IFR VMC while looking for traffic. It's another skill level. You can't just do all VFR, all IFR. IFR in VMC is what you guys are missing. You need to practice that. And I don't think it's just this school. I think this is something in all of flight training that is being missed because everyone assumes, well, that should be easy. So here's what I see on the check ride. I do the briefing. I make it clear, you're in the clouds, you're out of the clouds. You know, they know they're looking for traffic when they're not in the clouds. But because they're on an instrument departure procedure, or because they're on an IFR radar vector, the pilot's brain just goes right into instrument mode. And 100% of their attention goes to the instruments. And I'm sitting over here like, who's looking for traffic? That's what I mean by IFR in VMC. It needs to be practiced. Now, I'm not saying that instructors need to do extra lessons for this. It's the kind of thing you can do on your way to do instrument approaches, on your way back to your home airport, okay? Practice IFR and VMC, please. And the biggest part that I mean by that is looking for traffic. Okay? Another one that I'm going to put in the category of skill building, exercises. You guys all know about using ailerons and elevator during taxi when there's wind, right? Okay? I don't know if you were taught what I was taught, but I was taught that the reason that's so important is so the plane doesn't get flipped over or something in a gust of wind. That is ridiculous. Okay? If it is that windy, we should not be in an airplane. We should probably be in the basement somewhere because that's called a hurricane, okay? We're not worried about the 3,000-pound airplane getting blown over by a gust of wind, no matter where the flight controls are. But it is important. And those of you who have watched the 2-minute AOPA video in my notes know why it's important. It's because it gets the pilot thinking about the takeoff. So every time you taxi out to fly, you should be doing aileron and elevator corrections as a habit to be thinking what I'm going to do when it's time to take off. Because when you're going 50-some miles an hour down the runway and you're in that transition area between being a ground vehicle and being a flying vehicle, that gust of wind is a safety factor, isn't it? So, instructors, as an exercise, what I recommend, future instructors, if the windsock's moving at all, make sure the person in the left seat is doing the proper corrections, okay? If the windsock is dead, give them simulated wind. Every single flight. Those of you whose instructors are not in the room, I recommend that you ask them for this. Say, hey, I heard recently that this is a good idea. I want you to give me simulated wind every time we fly. And practice it at least for a few seconds so that you stay in the habit of thinking about it. Fair enough? That AOPA video, it's in, I think it's in both my private commercial and my instrument, but it's at least in the private commercial. Just go look for taxi wind corrections. All right, another one that's common everywhere. This is not just at this flight school. Rudder, proper use of the rudder, okay? You guys know what the rudder does. No one has any problem explaining the purpose and that kind of stuff. You guys know about turning tendencies, some better than others. What it means for the plane to be coordinated. So the kind of exercises I'm talking about are go out, student and instructor, and first of all, for most of the stuff that we're doing when we're talking about visual exercises, too many instructors, in my opinion, are teaching to use the dash as your pitch and bank reference. I don't think that's a good idea because you're not in a tandem seat airplane. If you're in a tandem seat airplane like a Piper Cub where you're just looking straight down the middle of the airplane, then fine, use the dash as your reference. But when you're in on one side or the other of the dash, and you're using the dash as your reference, every maneuver that has a turn to the left looks different when you do it to the right. You basically just doubled the amount of maneuvers you have to learn because you got to learn what it looks like this way and you got to learn what it looks like this way. So a better technique, this is one that Gordon Henrie taught me. He used to say to take a dry erase marker and put a mark on the windshield. I don't think that's a good idea to be writing on windshields. So I get these little suction cups. You can go out and probably get a bag of them on Amazon, just a little clear suction cup. Next time you fly, and you can use a corner of a sticky note, just need a little dot of something. Sit in your seat, and this person in the left seat, person in the right seat, and find the 0 pitch reference on your windshield and take the spot right in front of your belly button, right off your nose, and put something right there on the windshield. Stick it to your windshield. And you're probably going to have to lean forward and put it on and then sit back and be like, nah, it's a little too high. And then you move it down like, nah, it needs to go there. Okay. You're going to figure out where that spot is, okay? Right in front of your nose, right on the 0 pitch reference. I'm going to call that your pitch reference. Now you go out with student and instructor, and I recommend that early in training, instructors point out what it looks like when you're doing it wrong. So you look at the pitch reference, and the instructor says, okay, you see that mountain out on the horizon? Yep, got it. Okay, keep that suction cup right on that mountain. Or, you're going to pitch up and you do this, so maybe find a cloud or something. And release the right rudder pressure. Well, the only way to keep that spot and keep the airplane tracking towards that spot without proper rudder is to bank the plane to the right. I know I'm facing you guys, so imagine going this way. Because of turning tendencies, especially when you're climbing, right? Well, guess what I see when I do check rides? More often than I wish I had to admit, people are climbing out, they're nice and coordinated, they turn the autopilot on, and they naturally relax their right foot. And the plane banks about 4 degrees to the right, maybe 5 or 6, depending on their speed and pitch angle. It just shows me that they're not fully paying attention to what the plane's doing. So rudder exercises help you see that it's not just about the way the nose is going, but it's also, are my wings level? So this brings up another point that is commonly missed in flight training these days, and that is your heading reference is not always on your nose. You guys need to get comfortable using heading references on your wingtips. You're like, what? I'm not heading that way. No, but it's still a reference of your orientation. Go look at any cockpit video of an aerobatic pilot. They are looking all over the place all the time. Why? Because they're getting information from all of these different places. As a non-aerobatic pilot, I would suggest to you that you need to be used to using at least 3 references, straight ahead and each wingtip. Okay? This leads to another suggestion. When you're doing maneuvers, most of the private and commercial maneuvers use outside visual references. When you look at the airplane flying handbook, at the end of each maneuver it has a list of common errors. Almost every single one of them says, relying too much on the instruments. That's an error. You're doing it wrong if you're using the instruments. And the FAA even kind of leads you astray sometimes when they talk, they put so much emphasis on headings. Well, how do I know my heading? Like, well, look at the reference outside, So that's why, I don't know what other examiners are doing, but like during slow flight, I don't say turn left heading 030 or whatever, because Where's that automatically put your attention? Oh, where's 030? That's inside the airplane. No, I don't do that. I want to see you be able to fly by looking outside. That's what the FAA wants to see you do. So usually when I do conduct a test and do slow flight, I'm looking for either 90 degree or 180 degree turns by looking outside. To help with that, and most maneuvers, I recommend strongly that you guys pick heading references that are on the grid system. I don't know if you guys noticed here in Phoenix and most towns until you get out east, they're a little different out there. The roads follow cow paths or something. But here in the West, our cities and towns, for the most part, are built on north, south, east, west lines. There's exceptions, but most of the farm fields and most of the city streets, you can find usually at least 3 out of 4 directions, where if you look way out on the horizon, you can see these north, south, east, west lines. And a lot of times what I'm seeing during maneuvers, say let's just pick steep turns, is, I'll ask, what's your primary heading reference? They're like, oh, it's that mountain. And it's so if this classroom is the grid system, they pick some random mountain that's like that way. Like, okay. And then they bug it. That's fine. The FAA is okay with you using the heading bug as a secondary heading reference. So now we've got this random mountain that looks a lot like that mountain and that mountain and that mountain, and it looks like that mountain and that mountain and that mountain. And okay, that's your heading reference. And they go into the steep turn, and I wonder sometimes as they come around this 360, if I were to reach over with the checklist or something and cover up that heading indicator as they come through this part of the turn, I wonder how many pilots would still be able to know that same mountain. Now, would I do that as an examiner? I don't think that's fair. I don't think that that's the place or time to be making this point. But here today is the time. I'm telling you, especially if I was in a place that I hadn't flown very much, I would have a hard time when I'm in a 45 or 50 degree bank, private versus commercial, and I'm coming around this corner, I would have a really hard time picking out that same mountain if it wasn't for that bug on the heading indicator. But what does the FAA say? They say you need to learn to fly primarily by looking outside. Please do yourselves and your future students a favor. When it comes to most of these airwork maneuvers, line it up on the grid system. Maybe it's not your favorite mountain, but pick something on the horizon that's lined up either north, south, east, or west with the grid system, and pay attention as you're doing that steep turn. It's like you're flying over the top of a piece of graph paper. You can tell when you've got 90 degrees to go, and you can tell I'm coming to my point. You don't need that stinking heading bug on the heading indicator anymore. So, this brings us to the technique. Have any of you ever had your instructor actually cover all of the instruments when they taught you a maneuver for the first time? Raise your hand if your instructor has done that, like early on in training. So maybe a third of the room. That's good. That's good. I'm not joking when I say all the instruments. Like Gordon Henrie, he used to teach the towel technique. Like just take a beach towel and just throw it over the dash. Like cover everything. This is after you did your cruise check, made sure all the engine instruments were good. They just cover it up and teach people to fly by looking outside. In the Cirrus, the SR20 that you guys are flying, it works real convenient with your nice big checklist. Just set a checklist in front of each display. Okay? You can still have your standby instruments if you want to glance down at the altitude or something, that's fine. But the point is look outside. So that's another exercise with the pitch reference and using multiple directions. When you get to commercial and you start doing chandelles and lazy eights, the 180 starts becoming really important. So if I'm already lined up on this grid system, and I know that way out on the horizon I can see the roads there, and I know that behind me they go that way, then I've already got perfect references, don't I? So just a suggestion for you there. All right.
Jim? I think we have a question.
Go for it. What's the question? Can you read it?
I think it's been a while. So suction cup will be placed right above the nose, it says?
So the suction cup will be on the windshield wherever the zero pitch reference line is from your eyeball. So when you look at the natural horizon, you can usually do this in most airplanes. I think it would work in the SR20 when you're sitting on the ramp. So just look out on the horizon, ignore the buildings, ignore the mountains, and just look, where's the natural horizon? That's where you want to put this suction cup. Then when you get up in cruise and it's time to do the maneuver, make sure that it's still on the natural horizon. So
if we are practicing doing that with the suction cup, and then we get so used to doing that, if I show up to your check ride and put that up there, will that be okay?
So his question is about putting the suction cup up for the check ride. What most pilots find is you only need it there for 5 or 6 hours of time. Some people more, some people less. But what you're doing is you're training your eyes where to look. Once you learn where to look, it doesn't matter what airplane in. You can go from the Cirrus to the Seminole to the Diamond to the CRJ to the 737. And that's why I'm such a big fan of this technique, is because it doesn't matter what shape the dashboard is. It doesn't matter whether the dash is here, here, or here. I learned to fly airplanes by looking here, out the window. That's one of the reasons it's such a valuable technique.
So was that a yes or a no?
So the answer is, can you use it? There's no reason you can't do that on a check ride. If you want to put it up on the check ride, that's fine. Thank you.
All right.
I should probably answer the question. So, yes, I don't know what other DPs would say, but for myself, if someone wants to do that, that's fine. But I think you'll find by the time you get to the check ride, you won't need to. So, but I do realize some of you haven't been doing this, and you're getting close to a check ride. So maybe it's sooner than you think. All right. Trim exercises, kind of like same as rudder. Have the instructor demonstrate what it looks like and feels like when it's not done properly. Maybe some of your instructors are already doing this, but I know that what I see on check rides is the anxiety version of the person. I get that, okay? I resemble that comment, okay? I don't know if you guys realize this, but I've been on a few check rides myself. It's a real thing, anxiety. And people just, usually it's like the end of the emergency procedure where they simulate pulling caps. I'm like, okay, my controls, and I take the controls and the trim's like, whoa! It's like, how hard were you pushing on that for the last 2.5 minutes? And right? Yeah, like they're doing their workout, with the trim not being set right. So anyway, the old mantra is fly what you see, trim what you feel. That's worth writing down, by the way. Fly what you see, trim what you feel. And you guys, there's plenty of videos and other instruction out there. I'm just bringing it up as something that I still see, even by the time someone gets to a check ride, they're not properly trimming all the time. Another one similar to that, since I brought it up, is fly what you see, not what you feel. And that one has to do with things like we're climbing out, hand flying, no autopilot, and there's the reference for the ball to be centered, and the ball's halfway to the right the whole time. We're not coordinated. We're not using enough right rudder. We need more right rudder. But the pilot is like, I'm pushing the right rudder. Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but not all airplanes feel the same. Some airplanes are rigged a little bit different, and some airplanes need more rudder or less rudder than other airplanes. Some airplanes, when you start a descent, have you noticed they actually need left rudder? So that's what that one means, is fly what you see, not what you feel. I feel my right foot pushing the pedal. Okay, apparently you need to feel more. Do whatever it takes is the point. And for both the trim and the rudder exercises, instructors should be doing this at different pitch angles, different climb speeds and descent speeds to feel how the airplane changes. And this should be like the first few lessons of private pilot. And then again at the commercial, when you're getting back into it after focusing on the instruments for so long. All right. So trim exercises, in the SR20, of course, you guys are just doing aileron and elevator trim. There's no rudder trim. But practice, here's what it feels like when it's not trimmed. Here's what it feels like when it is trimmed. Make sure you're training the subconscious parts of your mind to do that. All right, another one some of you might have heard me talk about. Hand flying with the autopilot disengaged, but the flight director on. And this is another thing that I've noticed is a significant challenge at this flight school, but I am convinced that it's not just this flight school. Flight schools all over the country, first of all, there's still too many flight schools that don't even teach the autopilot properly. So you guys are A+ on even teaching the autopilot. And what I've seen at your school is you guys and gals are really good at flying with the autopilot on, and you're really good at hand flying with no flight director. This is another one where there's a middle category that's being missed. Hand flying with the flight director. When we talk about going flight level change versus vertical speed versus pitch mode, myself included, we usually call those autopilot modes. But that's really a misnomer if you think about it. Those aren't autopilot modes, those are flight director modes. So one thing that might help this is if we start calling it what it really is. Well, I want the vertical speed flight director mode. The autopilot is just the muscle. The autopilot are the physical motors, the servos that do the pitch and the roll. And we all know that it doesn't do the rudder, right? So don't relax the rudder when you turn on the autopilot. Please. Okay, so instructors, private, instrument, commercial, CFI, at every level in your amazing SR20s with the Garmin perspective, please take advantage of the opportunity for the person in, I'll call it pilot flying because I already said CFI training, for the pilot flying to hand fly while manipulating the flight director modes and looking for traffic. It's a lot going on. I would suggest to you that, well, see if I have anything else I want to say about that. Questions on that? Is that a question? I heard a ding. Okay. Related to that, but different, someone just starting their instrument training, I recommend that the instructor have the pilot hand fly following the flight director, and the instructor manipulate the modes of the flight director for climbs, turns, and descents. Adding flaps, reducing flaps, go through all these exercises of changing configurations, changing headings, changing pitch, where all the pilot in the left seat has to do. This is like instrument lesson 1 or instrument lesson 2. And think of the flight director as a coach to teach you how to do perfect standard rate turns and perfect climbs and perfect level offs. That flight director is an amazing coach on how to fly instruments smoothly. And you can actually learn muscle memory. Again, the instructor's doing the modes. All the pilot flying is focused on is just follow that flight director and pay attention to what it looks like and feels like. Pay attention, okay, I'm climbing to 4,000, and look at when it starts leveling off. It's probably about 10% of your climb rate. You guys know that one, right? If you're climbing at 500 feet per minute, you should level off 50 feet early. Well, guess what? Your flight director knows that. Think of her as a coach. Then, about a third, maybe halfway through the training of the instrument, shift it over to where the pilot flying is not only hand flying with the flight director, but now it's his or her job to change the modes. That's like another level of workload, right? Because you got to look where your hand is, and that helps you get used to what to push and what to twist. So you're building more muscle memory. Now you got the muscle memory with your left hand on the stick and your feet on the rudders. Now you're adding in the buttonology. Get really good at that. About halfway through the instrument training before you start flying approaches. So maybe a third of the way through. Then take the freaking hood off, and I'm going to emphasize what I already told you earlier, and practice looking for traffic at the same time. Now the workload went up even more. Now I'm ATC in my ear telling me climb, descend, turn, direct to, now fly a heading, now climb again, but use a different mode. Okay, ATC wouldn't say that, but the instructor can. Now, not only are they listening to ATC, hand flying, manipulating all the buttons and knobs, and looking for traffic. See the workload go up and up and up? The FAA calls this the building block method of flight instruction. And these are all exercises that should be happening as you guys progress. I think that too often the instructors are just looking at the lesson and be like, all right, check the boxes, we did everything on the sheet, we're done. I know it's on the iPads. But there's a lot more opportunity to actually build skills along the way. Fair enough? Okay. The other ones that I have to talk about today don't really fall into exercises like that, but things I wanted to talk about. Even the heading rough one wasn't really an exercise, but it's something to help you during exercises, so I mentioned that one. Excuse me. Related to that is when you're flying visually, this is private instrument, commercial, doesn't matter, but mainly we see this during maneuvers or in the traffic pattern. Let's just use the traffic pattern as an example. Even IFR pilots have to fly the traffic pattern sometimes, right? So when you're flying the traffic pattern and the wind is calm, every turn in the traffic pattern is a 90-degree turn, correct? Start simple. I would recommend to you that it is a valuable skill for the rest of your career that every time before you turn, you look out at the horizon, not only look for traffic, but pick a target on the horizon that you can point your nose at. Every turn in the traffic pattern, you should have a target, whether you're going left or right, to put your nose on when you get there. If the wind is blowing, either headwind or tailwind, well, if you're landing, it should be a headwind on final, right? So should be a tailwind on downwind typically, and a headwind on final. So you're gonna do, depending on whether it's left traffic or right traffic, depending on whether it's the base turn or the crosswind turn, you're either gonna do something less than 90 degrees or more than 90 degrees. Doesn't change the fact that you should have a target and you should estimate, well, there's my calm wind target. Because I got a headwind right now, say I'm turning a right crosswind, I'm gonna actually aim right here. Because it's all about ground track. But make sure you have a target. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but at least you're thinking about it. And you have a target to aim your nose at when you do that turn. So really see that a lot in the traffic patterns. People just, maybe they glance for traffic or something, but then they just kind of randomly turn, and it's pretty easy to tell they don't really know when to go wings level because they haven't thought about it. That's what it looks like to me. All right, let's transition over to ground reference maneuvers and give you some specific tips. A lot of what I talked about so far of the pitch reference, the emphasis outside, the grid line, north, south, east, west kind of stuff, all of that also applies to ground reference maneuvers. One of the, I don't know if this is a common error, but I still see it too much, and maybe it's just checkride nerves, but whether it's S turns over a road or turns around a point, so we'll just talk private pilot first. People are hurrying into the maneuver. I would suggest to you, and I don't think the book says anything about this, this is just from my experience, you should have straight and level of at least 15 to 20 seconds before you start the turn around a point or the S turns over a road. Don't be in a turn and then say, okay, now I'm starting my turn around a point. Like, whoa, you're making it way too difficult for yourself. Like, figure out the wind, go out as far as you need to, and just give yourself that 15 to 20 seconds. So say the edge of this desk is a reference line going this way, and this intersection is my point. I'm gonna do turns around a point. May I use your cup? There you go. So there's my turn around a point. There's my pylon. So I figured out I've got a tailwind going this way. I come around far enough that I can go wings level and have 15 to 20 seconds before I get to beam my point and then start the maneuver, whether it's turns around a point or S turns over a road. Thank you. What should the bank angle be? Well, it depends. It's going to change with the headwind or tailwind. All that stuff's in the books. The ACS gives you some leeway. We know that we need to be 600 to 1,000 feet. 6 seems a little low. Please don't do that. 800, 900, somewhere in there is good. We can't be more than 1,000 per the ACS, but okay, so we're going to be 600 to 1,000 feet AGL. So really what determines the bank angle is how close or how far you are from your reference point, right? I would suggest to you that the proper average bank angle for turns around a point and S turns over a road is 30 degrees of bank, okay? If you have less than 30 degrees of bank, I think you're making too big of an arc. If you have more than 30 degrees of bank as an average, again, it's going to change with headwind or tailwind component, then I think you're too close. Just my opinion, but I think 30 degrees is the sweet spot, okay? I see some people that do a turnaround a point and pass their check ride using 10 to 12 degrees of bank, and it takes forever. And it makes it more difficult because there's that much more time that you have to hold altitude and coordination. and look for traffic. Do all that other stuff listed in the ACS. Make it easy on yourself. Get in there, bam, get her done. Okay, it's not because we're in a hurry. Well, maybe some examiners it is. For me, it's not because I'm in a hurry. It's because I want you to be successful and just get in about 30 degrees bank. You should be comfortable with that and get her done. Now, we don't need to be doing steep turns 900 feet off the deck. But if there's a strong wind, this is one of the reasons. If someone ever asks you, why do we start with a tailwind? Because your steepest bank is first. So if you come into this thing with a really strong tailwind and you go into 40 degrees of bank first, that might be okay in a strong tailwind. Because on the other side, you're probably going to be 15 or 20 degrees of bank, depending on how strong this wind. Probably a bad day for a check ride if it's that strong. But steepest bank was first, so you're not going to be any steeper than that. So there you go. It's okay to start kind of steep if there's wind. But if the wind's calm, as an average, I think 30 degrees is good. So that's private pilot. Let's move on to some of the commercial stuff. And I know a lot of you are not there yet. You can come back, hopefully watch this video later. If the recordings don't work, you can maybe talk me into coming back and talking to you again. I'm not going to take time to explain 8s on pylons. For someone who doesn't understand the maneuver, it's a doozy, okay, to understand. There's a lot going on there with the physics and with this whole pivotal altitude thing. So the Airplane Flying Handbook and the ACS do a good job outlining the maneuver for the most part. I have some technique stuff that I want to try and share with you, and hopefully this makes sense. First of all, like every maneuver, I recommend going somewhere that has a grid system. Okay, so this could be farm fields, this could be solar panels. I heard someone say they don't like flying over the solar panels because if they had an emergency, they don't want to land in the solar panels. Like, okay, I get that. It might be expensive for somebody, but if you pull caps, like personally, I don't have any problem pulling caps over solar panels. At least I know I'm not landing on someone's house. So you guys have a lot of solar panels out here, but let's say you got the grid system. And whatever it is, farm fields, whatever, and you decide that you're going to go do 8s on pylons around here. Let's see, does this black one work too? See if these colors are going to get the job done for me. I'm going to try to use the black. We start with we start this maneuver at an angle, and let's just pretend that this is the first pylon we want to use. And the wind or breeze is coming from the bottom of the board blowing this way. So the proper way to start the maneuver would be on a 45-degree angle coming from here. You guys can see that, okay? And, well, I shouldn't be heading right at the pylon, sorry. Let's see if I can draw this accurately. Gonna be something like this. All right, artwork was never my specialty. I have not been able to find anything in the ACS or the Airplane Flying Handbook that requires the pilot, oh, we got more markers, thank you, that requires the pilot to choose both pylons before starting the maneuver. Because that's one of the toughest things about the maneuver is picking pylons that are the correct distance apart. Thank you for grabbing those. So my first recommendation for 8s on pylons is to establish a straight reference line for both of your pylons that are perpendicular to the wind. Pick your first pylon and just know that your other pylon is going to be over here somewhere. We don't really care where. So the black is going to be what the ground track should look like. So let me see if I can get this accurate. I'm going to say the wind's pretty calm. We're not worried about ground track. I can do better than that. All right, come on, Jim. Okay, close enough for government work. So there's the eventual ground track of our 8 on pylon. The next technique that I suggest to you that I don't see most people doing is don't just bug your heading here, but pick a heading reference way out on the horizon. I'll make it green. So way out on the horizon, pick a mountain or something that is your entry heading reference, okay? And before you start the maneuver, 90 degrees or off your right wing, pick another mountain that you can look at 90 degrees this way. So you've got a 45 degree point here, you've got a 45 degree point here. I know that wasn't, it's a bigger mountain. Okay, use your imagination with my drawing here. So that's important. Have 45 degree reference points going each direction. The Airplane Flying Handbook does a good job explaining that pivotal altitude still occurs at multiple bank angles, meaning whether you're in a tight circle with a steep turn or whether you're in a shallow bank, the pivotal altitude is the pivotal altitude. So what is it that determines the size of the circle? It's how close you first come to the pylon, okay? And again, I know a lot of you haven't done these yet, but what is it that's really changing that the Airplane Flying Handbook does talk about? The straight and level, from there to there. When you come around this turn and you go wings level right here, and you stay wings level to here, what does the book say? How many seconds should that be?
3 to 5.
3 to 5 seconds. Now, it's possible that when the FAA wrote that, they were just thinking about Cessna 172s and 152s and Piper Archers and Warriors, where most people fly these maneuvers at 90 knots indicated. You guys aren't flying these at 90 knots indicated. You're flying SR20s. So because it's not in the ACS, that 3 to 5 seconds is not in the ACS, but the ACS references the Airplane Flying Handbook, which says 3 to 5 seconds. So if someone goes 20 seconds of wings level from here to here, is that acceptable? I mean, where's the cutoff? Where do you say it's okay? We need to be getting closer to the 3 to 5 seconds, is what I'm getting at. Well, the only way to have your straight and level anywhere near 3 to 5 seconds, let's just call it less than 10. To get this anywhere close to less than 10 seconds, and you can just count in your head, 1001, 1002, 1003. Well, of course, it has to do with how far apart the pylons are. Okay? So now that we kind of have the very rough sketch of what it should look like, let's walk through it step by step. So you're coming from down here, you've got your tailwind, you've got your first pylon, you've got your reference line that goes between both pylons, you've got your heading reference on your entry heading, and you learn what this distance should be so that you navigate your airplane at pivotal altitude at the proper speed, and it's actually not here, it's here is when you're a beam, right? That's when you go from straight and level into a left turn, okay? You fly your pivotal altitude, watching your pylon, doing the pivotal altitude stuff that we do. I'm not going to go into detail on that. And how do you know when to go wings level? This is the magic of these heading references. People come around this first corner and they don't know, should I go wings level here, 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 here? They don't know where to go wings level because they don't have that mountain out there. Well, it should be pretty much 90 degrees from where you started, okay? Not looking at the heading indicator, looking outside. So you go wings level at the proper place, start counting your 3 to 5 seconds, and from here to here, hopefully is less than 10 seconds. I'll say that. Hopefully it's less than 10 seconds, okay? If it's more than 10 seconds, your pylons are too far apart and your entry is too far away. So there's a measuring stick for you guys to go try next time you're doing 8s on pylons, is if this is more than 10 seconds, I'm entering it too far away. So you just bring it in closer, and your pylons will get closer together. That's why I don't like to pick that second pylon until we're in the maneuver. Let me clarify, I'm not talking about as a DP. It's not my job to pick the pylons as a DP. So as a flight instructor, teaching this to someone, I would not teach them to pick both pylons first. Instead, we do this, we do our 3 to 5. I've already got this reference here. So at the appropriate point, when it's a beam me here, I just pick something. It could be a road, it could be a mailbox. It doesn't matter what it is as long as you can look at it with your eyeballs. You've already got one axis of it. You're just picking the other axis and you're saying, okay, there's my pylon. What color was I doing? Black. There's my other pylon, happens to be right here on my drawing. And then you do your pivotal altitude stuff that everybody's good at. Keep it coordinated. And again, how do I know when to go wings level? I've got my original reference here. Happens to be where my heading bug was the whole time. And I go wings level at the right place. And there you go. Maneuver's done. During training, I recommend doing this multiple times nonstop as an exercise. On the check ride, we only need to see one 8-on pylon. So all the way around to where you started makes it an 8-on pylon. But during training, especially when there's wind, it takes a lot of skill to come back to the same place and to keep going. Once you can do this 3, 4, 5 times, you got it. You got it. So too often people come around this last corner and they end up here or they end up over here, and it's because they don't know when, well, it's everything I just talked about, but it's mostly because they don't know where to go wings level here and they don't know where to go wings level here. And it's because they don't have those references at the 45s. So there's everything I just shared with you is technique in addition to what's in the Airplane Flying Handbook and the ACS. Question?
So I'd say my problem is picking pylons that are too far apart.
Okay.
So in my next lesson, I should pick that. I mean, I always pick a center point, also that I'm going to cross. Would you say to like...
Make your center point closer to the first pylon.
And would you say to like, for me to kind of get a better visual of like how to pick my pylons, like in the future, I should kind of fly past my center point, 2 to 3 seconds, drop my wing 30-degree bank, and see where that gets me?
So for the microphone, she's saying that usually her pylons are too far apart, and she's asking maybe I should just cross that center point, count 2 or 3 seconds, and then roll into it. I've never taught it that way. I usually like to have that first pylon. I think you need to pick at least the first one because the ACS does have a skill item about selecting pylons. So no is the answer. But it doesn't take that much experience to learn what this distance should be. So if my drawing represents ideal, what you're saying is you usually start this far away.
Really far. Like it takes.
And you need to bring it into the proper space to get the result.
Okay.
Okay, so to get closer to the 35-second straight level, the only way to do that is to move our pylons closer together, which would then
Yeah.
we'd have to fly steeper banking throughout the maneuver with closer pylons.
Correct.
We're capped at 40 degrees.
Okay, so he's saying that to get the pylons closer together, we have to fly closer, we have to fly steeper. Of course, we're saying indicated airspeed is set, and even in calm wind, pivotal altitude set. So if we can't change the airspeed we're flying at, we can't change pivotal altitude, all we can change is bank, and you're saying that company procedure limits you to 40 degrees of bank.
No, the ACS limits us to 40 degrees of bank.
Oh, it's the ACS. Says no more than 40. So I think you'll find it should still work. I mean, unless it's crazy windy, 40 should be plenty.
Okay. 35 still seems out of reach.
It does, and that's why I'm going with less than 10 at the speed you guys are flying, because your indicated on this is
120.
120. The other solution would be talk to management about dropping that 120 to 110. Because you know your turn radius is the square of your speed. So knocking 10 knots off that would
I
help.
think 120 is Cirrus's recommendation. I don't think it's the school.
I don't know.
I think in the school.
Check in on that. I don't know that Cirrus publishes a specific. The ACS just says less than maneuvering speed.
But where I was going with this,
okay.
I don't want to get close to that 40 degree
Right.
because it's a limitation. If I want to stay at 30, then this is probably wrong, but could you not use a straight 90 degree? Because if I make this more of an acute angle, then I can also move my pylons closer.
So he's asking if the cross in the middle can be something other than 90 degrees, and I don't think that's okay. I'd have to go back and see exactly how they explain it in the Airplane Flying Handbook, but I think the intent is to cross 90 degrees relative each way. But go out and try it. see, try the technique. Again, this is just technique, but for the people that I've seen do something close to this, it's such an easier maneuver. Having these other references, keeping your attention outside, picking that other pylon in the middle of the maneuver. So that's my suggestion on that. Any other questions, 8s on pylons? Again, I know like half of the room was like, what are you guys talking about? But just hang in there, it's coming. Give it a few months. All right, so.
Jim, I think
Yes.
we have one more comment.
Go for it, read it to me, please.
It says the commercial ACS under skills says select suitable pylons, then enter the maneuver, which alludes that pylons are chosen first. Is this wrong interpretation?
So the question is, because the ACS says to select the pylons, do you have to select them both before starting the maneuver? Does it actually say before starting the maneuver? That part I don't remember. If you can type that in real quick. But I've had this discussion with other examiners, and the technique I'm talking about, everyone I've talked to says this is acceptable. So, and that's why I push back a little bit on the question about, hey, maybe I can just pick both pylons in the maneuver. Like, well, you need to have at least. And my argument would be, we've already got the one reference line. We've already got the solid one here. We've got one solid pylon, and we have half of the other pylon. So I think we're meeting the intent of the rule of selecting. That would be my answer. And it's so much more difficult because you don't really know exactly how it's going to go with these pylons until you're in the maneuver. So, okay. Did I type anything else, or are we good there?
I think it is. I think it is.
Okay, Kai? It does not say specifically before the maneuver? Okay, so you're selecting. Go ahead. Someone online?
Yep.
Or before you start training.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Christina. Almost my student is the commercial student. So we've been talking about how we to select two different pilot before the maneuvers. So I'm coming from Cessna. We used to pick one point, and it was 100 for Cessna. We've been doing that fly straight out, perpendicular from the wind direction, usually 10 seconds. We pick second pilot. But since we have 120 ground speed, I let them just like whatever you see 20 seconds at the point, that's going to be your second pilot. I'm doing that way, and it worked perfectly. So
what is your,
using,
how much time do you have straight and level in the middle of the maneuver when you do it that way?
so I let them, once you check out your ground speed and then pick the cable altitude, do your window circling turn.
No, I understand. Once you're in the maneuver, Christina, when you go wings level, how many seconds does that end up being wings level to the next pylon turn? Do you know?
A turn, I just let them visually a beam and counting 3 seconds and then turning to your first turn and then come around. We set the heading bug, but it's not common error is they usually load out right at the heading bug, but it's not really.
Yeah.
So when you come around, when you beam another pylon, the other side, same, just like count 3 seconds and then come around, turn the other direction to second turn. It works perfectly. So I assuming I can keep using that way, or?
Well, hey, if it works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I think she's saying it's 3 seconds wings level.
Okay. What I think she was talking about first is another technique that I've seen before, which is before starting the maneuver to fly over here or to fly over here and to time your pylons to pick them before. And if I heard you correctly, Christina, you said 20 seconds was what you were doing.
Because we are faster than Cessna. So
Right.
I've been talking with Brian. Yeah, he was okay with the 20 seconds. That's why I've been using the 20 seconds rules.
If that works and it gives you anything, close to 10 seconds or so straight and level here, then I think that's fine. Keep doing it. So, and there's going to be lots of little techniques and things that work. That's fantastic. Do what it says in the ACS. Do what it says in the airplane flying handbook. Take these other tidbits that I'm giving you, and hopefully it helps. Because too often what I'm seeing is people are not having any kind of grid system. They pick some random tree, here, and they pick some other random tree here, and they're trying to come in and figure all this out, and there's like, I can barely tell what's going on. You know? If it wasn't for ForeFlight looking at their ground track afterwards, you know, it's like, was that an 8-on pylon? So anything you can do towards the direction that I'm recommending, I think would be a step in the right direction. So any other questions on that? All right, moving on. Bingo, we did do that. This is one that some of you might have heard me talk about before. We're done with 8s on pylons. You're welcome. It's a fun maneuver. When you get good at them, they actually really are a fun maneuver. This whole pivotal altitude thing, dividing your attention, keeping it coordinated, it's really a cool maneuver. And it's fun to be good at them. All right. So there might be 1 or 2 people in this room, you don't have to say who you are, that have heard this, but it keeps happening, and so I need to keep talking about it. And that is the 45-degree pattern entry. If we have a runway, looks something like this, and I don't know, let's just say it's Goodyear, and this is 03. Actually, I don't even know which way this classroom is facing. So use your imagination. We'll make this one 2-1. If a normal traffic pattern, let's just do right traffic 2-1. Let's say that this represents a normal downwind base to final. Okay? I'll even round out the corners for you. So calm wind. Actually, it doesn't matter what the wind is, but we'll keep it simple. That is a normal downwind base final. What is normal? Hopefully what most flight instructors are teaching. When you're coming from, in this example, it would probably be a aux 6 arrival, and the tower says make right traffic 2-1. What angle are we supposed to enter the downwind at?
45.
Everybody knows that. Everybody gives the right answer, but so few pilots do it properly. Okay? This is a pretty plain Jane example. It's not just about a 45-degree angle. See if I can draw this straight, since I'm being so picky about it. So if that's a 45, it's a 45-degree angle to a midfield. If someone hits the downwind here, is that proper? If someone is still flying this direction, should they be saying I'm joining the right downwind? No, you're not there yet. Okay? You can tell I'm a little worked up about this. Because it's not just the people I'm flying with, it's the people I hear on the radio and see on the ADSB. So I know that this is like a bigger issue than just the person I'm doing a check ride with that day. And so here's what I think everyone's missing. And I don't even know if this is in the books. Maybe this is just some wisdom that was taught to me years ago. Does anyone know why the 45 to a midfield downwind is the standard?
So you can look for traffic.
Bingo. So you can look for traffic. In other words, there should be at least a few seconds that you are wings level and actively looking left and right before you join the downwind. You're looking for paragliders. You're looking for people that are not talking on the radio that are just lost. You're looking for pipeline surveyors. You know, does Tower ever get busy and miss traffic calls out? Okay, there's a reason, especially what if this was Buckeye or any other non-towered airport? Okay, so don't just focus on the 45 angle hitting the midfield downwind, which are both important. Make sure you've got that wings level time to look left and look right and look for traffic. Because more often what I see, this is actually a pretty easy example. Usually people just kind of come in at some wimpy angle. It's not really 45. But where this really becomes a problem is when you're coming from aux 6 and they say make left traffic runway 3. Okay? So let's say that this is a normal downwind base and final for 3. Well, if you're coming in from Mach 6 and they say make left traffic runway 3, midfield, here's the point, this is how they want you to enter. Correct? There are so many people that come in right here. I would say the majority of the time you guys do this, you're coming in 90 degrees to the downwind. And then what happens is, you were flying this way, you go wing up, you're in a low wing airplane, that whole time that you're in that right turn, your left wing is blocking the view. It gives me the heebie-jeebies to be in the right seat of that airplane. It's like, I can't look for traffic, your wing's in the way. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, your Delta airspace here at Goodyear is so small, you really have to hug the outside of the Delta and flip this sucker around to properly do what you were told to do, which is make left traffic runway 3. If you're not hugging the edge of the Delta, you're doing it wrong, is what it comes down to here at Goodyear, because the airspace is so small and you're going so fast in your SR20 airplane. Okay. And there is a relationship there with, again, turn radius is the square of your ground speed. So if your ground speed goes up by 10%, your turn radius goes up by more than 20%. So should we be doing this at 138 indicated? No, slow it down to your pattern speed before you start making these turns. Okay, I could say the same thing coming from, they call it the racetrack, but it's actually PIR on your chart. And they say, make left traffic or right traffic. So make sure you're hitting those 45s. To do it properly, you really need to go out to the edge of the Delta. You don't need to go outside the Delta, especially on the Luke side. So, all right. So make sure you got that wings level time, at least a few seconds. Enough time to just wings level, take a breath, look carefully. Okay, now it's time to enter the downwind. Okay, you shouldn't be wings level all the way around the corner, or in a bank all the way around the corner. All right, questions on that?
Yeah, I got one real quick.
Go for it.
Yeah, so you said if we're doing Mach 6, we want to do left downwind for runway 3. You said we want to kind of like follow the outskirts of the airspace. You said you don't like our left wing up because we can't see traffic. Would you like us to do like segmented turns so we can still put the wing down? Because still, if we're flying airspace, our wing's still going to be up.
So his question is, coming in like Mach 6 to left traffic, runway 3, should we do segmented turns where we turn, wings level, turns, wings level? I'd say no. The point is, you're constantly looking for traffic, do the turn to the 45, get it done, and then go wings level so that you have at least a few seconds before your next turn. Okay. That's the point, is give yourself some space here.
I think we have on the letter of agreement states that if they want you to make left traffic for runway 3, you have to go up to the interchange, like the 303 interchange. Yeah. It's like a visual landmark, and then you come back for the
So he's saying there's a letter of agreement for your operation here at Goodyear that requires you to go to a certain interchange. I haven't read the letter of agreement, but I bet it's consistent with everything I just said. Yes, and as an exercise, pilots need to learn to do this by looking at the runway that I erased. By looking at the runway, you should be able to figure out these angles and distances. My comment about the edge of the Delta is just understanding the speeds you're flying. That's what it takes to do it properly. But please stop doing 90-degree entries to the downwind. It's not proper. For anyone who thinks this is just a Jim Pittman pet peeve, I don't remember who I was with. You might be in this room, but we landed this after I saw at least 2 other people in your company do this. We were taxiing in, and ground wasn't very busy, so I said, "Hey, ground, you got time for a question?"
Oh, I was on the comms when you asked that question.
You heard that?
I heard that.
And I said, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead." I said, "I'm just curious, when you see these students and instructors, when you tell them to make left traffic or make right traffic, and they come in at a 90-degree angle, does that cause a problem for you?" Like, I really wanted to know, is this just a me thing? Do I just need to get over this? And the tower, he didn't even hesitate, she can tell you. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's a big problem." Like, this is something that they are irritated with you guys about, okay? Please stop doing 90-degree entries when you're told to make left traffic or make right traffic, all right?
Yeah, and to clarify the procedures, if you look in our documents, it says for the Loop Box 6 arrival, it says expect midfield right downwind for runway 21 or expect a left base entry for runway 3. There's no...
So there's really no set procedure.
Yeah, where you need to.
Well, it's in the aim. They shouldn't have to.
Right. I'm just saying it's not like you have to start at the 303. It just says
Gotcha.
expecting this one.
Go ahead, what do you got?
If you go on 4-flight, you could actually enable the arrivals for like runway.
Yeah, you guys have 4-flight overlays.
Which way to go?
Exactly. So, yeah, when I'm doing instrument check rides, I usually see this when we're coming back from Casa Grande, and they're just like 90 degrees right into the midfield. I'm like, oh. Okay. I'm hoping that the investment of my time today will reduce the amount of time that I need to spend in debriefs. Because I'm not going to fail an instrument check ride for that, but when I see a pilot do something, I got to say something, right? Like, you're not doing it right. So there you go, spread the word. All right, guys, hang in there. I'm down to the last one on my list, and we'll probably have a little bit of time for some more Q&A if you want. I saved the best for last. It's the Power Off 180. So this is another commercial maneuver. I'm not going to take time to explain what it is. For those of you that aren't there yet, I apologize. You got to go back and watch this later. I sure hope the recording works. And I'll just jump right to the punchline and tell you what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that too many of you are making turns too close to the ground, okay? The ACS and the Airplane Flying Handbook do not give specific requirements because every airplane's different. They can't. And I suspect that this comes from the fact that a large percentage of your current instructors learn to fly in Cessnas. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a fact. I know where a lot of your instructors came from. The good news is, in 12 more months, hopefully most of the instructors here were trained here, right? We can get some positive inbreeding going. Terrible way to explain it, but seriously, like I look at the people in this room and the people watching online, and I'm like, if I can just get you guys on track, then the next generation is going to be so much better. So here's the problem with the Cessna 172 trained people. And actually, I guess I could have used that same drawing. Let's just put a generic runway back up here. And we're going to say, just for where I put it on the board, this is a normal final approach. This is a normal downwind base to final. Okay, so use your imagination. Pretend that's a normal ground track. Okay, I can do better than that. Sheesh, I told you artwork is not my thing. All right, is that better? So, in a Cessna 172, I know you guys don't care, but I'll just give the explanation of where I think this problem is coming from. You can do a power off 180 in a Cessna 172 starting at the space of a normal downwind. And all you really have to do is cut the corner in a little bit, and it's an easy peasy maneuver. That's not the case for the SR20. In fact, I was going to look this up and I didn't. Does anyone know the glide ratio of the SR20?
9-to-1.
It is 9-to-1. I'm pretty sure that's the same as the 172. I'm pretty sure the 172 has a 9-to-1 glide ratio. What that means is, for every foot you go down, you go 9 feet forward. For every mile you go down, you go 9 miles forward in calm wind. Okay, that's what it means to have a 9-to-1 glide ratio. Well, how high is a mile? If we're talking nautical, it's about 6,000 feet. So if you're about 6,000 feet above the ground, you should be able to glide straight ahead for 9 miles before you hit in calm wind. Everyone agree with that? That's a 9-to-1 glide ratio. So if a 172 has a 9-to-1 glide ratio and an SR20 has a 9-to-1 glide ratio, why can't we fly them the same? And I've got an answer for you.
The airspeed?
The airspeed. He's on it. He's already thinking ahead. Remember, it's the third time I'm saying it, your turn radius is the square of your ground speed. Best glide on a 172 is a lot different than best glide on an SR20. Because you guys with the SR20 are flying faster, at any given bank angle, your turn radius is exponentially larger, which means you have to do steeper bank. Think about what that does to your vertical component of lift. There's the reason. It's not accurate to just say a Cirrus doesn't glide as well as a Cessna, because actually I think they're both 9-to-1, straight ahead. It has to do with the forward speed, and I'll just repeat those elements again so you can let it sink in. At any given bank angle, your radius is different. So to get the same radius, you have to use more bank, less vertical component of lift. Now you're falling out of the sky. So what I see, both on check rides and sitting out on the ramp or standing on the ramp or sitting in the run-up area, is I see your airplanes doing power off 180s, and you know it's a power off 180 because you hear them get cleared for a short approach. When they're a beam, so I guess we're doing left traffic 2-1 in this example. Let's just pick a number. I mean, draw straight, my goodness. I gotta stop drawing while I'm standing next to it. So you go a beam, your touchdown point, and that touchdown point is selected by the pilot, okay? And a beam it, you pull the power to idle. If you are at the distance or anywhere near the distance of a normal downwind when you start this maneuver in SR20, it requires you to basically start an immediate turn towards the runway, and now you're 50 to 75 feet off the deck, still in a 20-degree bank turn. You guys have seen this. You've been in the run-up area when they wow over the top of you, right? It's sketchy at best, okay? It scares me. And even though the ACS doesn't specifically talk about these distances, because it can't, it does talk about judgment and planning, all right? So I'm here to give you the magic bullet, okay? The black line represents a normal space downwind, which by definition, you're gonna have some wings level time if the wind's calm. If there's a strong tailwind, it might not be much, but let's just say the wind's calm. You're gonna have wings level on downwind, you're gonna have some wings level on base, look for traffic, you're gonna turn final, of course have wings level, come in land. That's a normal traffic pattern. To successfully do a power off 180 in the SR20, it is my professional opinion that you need to start half of that distance in. If this is normal, this is where you should start. In calm wind, you will know you're doing it correctly when you can make a constant turn to final with no wings level at approximately 30 degrees of bank. In calm wind, if you use more than 30 degrees of bank on this constant turn, it's a constant 180. Okay, there's no wings level for this. Did I say more? If you use more than 30 degrees of bank on average, you were too tight. There's your measuring stick. So you know if your downwind spacing was correct. If you use less than 30 degrees of bank, you were too far. Okay? Now, you're gonna need to adjust this for wind, any crosswind component, but I'm giving you a measuring stick. Start halfway, and this can be uncomfortably close. Okay? Start uncomfortably close, pull the power where you're supposed to, and go farther this way than the instructors have been doing. Basically, we're taking this distance and we're using it here. Okay, I probably could have drawn that a little more that way. In fact, I'm going to, for emphasis. To do it properly, you can actually come out probably to about here. And this solves that sketchy problem of doing turns 75 feet off the deck. Okay? So there's a few measuring sticks to give you some guidance on what to look for. One more time, calm wind, start half the distance. How do you know when to turn here? I can't tell you in words, okay? You just got to learn what it looks like looking at your runway. And don't focus on the freeway or the bush or the Amazon building or whatever, okay? Learn what it looks like in relation to the runway. And you should be able to go flaps 50, somewhere in here, and turn final a good 200 to 300 feet above the runway. And from there, it's just easy peasy, nice and easy. Fresh and breezy, how's that go? All right, question.
What are your thoughts on doing slips in a turn?
Question is, what are my thoughts on doing slips in a turn? Let me first say slips in general. In the SR20, you have enough flap authority that when you do this properly, slips should be rare. What I see too often is even when people start tight or tighter, usually what I see is somewhere about here. Okay, I'll use the red one. So usually people are somewhere here, like they know they should be tighter, but their instructor hasn't been making them do it this tight. So usually what I see is right about here. They get a beam, they pull their power, they go a little bit, but then they start this 10 to 15 degree bank turn and even go wings level right here. And then they turn in and they realize, oh crap, I'm high. And they've already got flaps 100, and now they're doing this crazy slip 100 feet off the ground while still coming around the corner, and it's taken everything they got just to hit the touchdown zone. In hindsight, this was an energy management problem, right? When you include drag in energy management, everything about the power off 180 is an energy management equation. If they, even starting here, if they would have just left the flaps at 50 and gone a little farther, they could have done okay without any slip and without any rush. So usually the people that need to slip in a power off 180 turn too soon, okay? Let me answer the question real quick. Slips, there's nothing specifically that prohibits slips in a turn. The airplane doesn't care. Really, slipping in a turn is just slipping while changing heading, which is a component of bank angle. So I don't know, let's just say I'm going to do a right turn. I can do right bank, left rudder, and I can do a right turn just by having more bank than rudder. Did I say that right? Right bank, left rudder. Is that what I said? Okay, so the airplane doesn't care. All it is the heading's changing. What we really got to watch out for is skidding turns. And where I've seen people almost get in trouble, I might have had an unsatisfactory commercial for this a couple years ago. You got to realize, so the way I remember it, he was doing a right turn at Deer Valley. And you know, there's this overbanking tendency that some airplanes have. So we're in a right turn, but it's a Cessna, so it's a yoke a little bit to the left. Well, does the rudder input, and he wants to slip because he turned too early. It was a power off 180. Does the proper rudder, whether I use left or right, have to do with the stick position or the wing position?
Wing.
Yeah, if we're in a right bank, there's only one proper rudder to push to slip this thing. It's called left. But because he had the stick a little to the left, it messed with his head, and he thought, I need opposite rudder. He's like looking down at his yoke, which is to his left a little bit, because we're in a steep right turn and overbanking tendency. So he looks down, goes left, and because he's got left yoke, and he pushes right rudder. Now we're in a right bank with right rudder, and we're skidding. That's called an unsatisfactory commercial check ride. Okay, so be careful. And one of the things I always taught my students is don't set a trap for yourself. You know, you can use that in all kinds of situations. In instrument flying, it's usually the person that's supposed to hold this altitude, but they're like, oh, I'm just going to get ahead and bug this altitude. Like, no, don't set a trap for yourself. Like, you know, there's some scenarios we get ahead, but don't set a trap for yourself. Don't, because if you get distracted or busy, you forget. So same thing with the slip. If you're gonna have to slip, now you risk doing a skid, and that can get real dangerous real fast. Okay.
I have a question about your power.
Go for it.
Before you started talking about this slip, before you started answering the question about the slip, on your green line example, you were talking about 50 degrees of flap. Are you a fan of just leaving 50 degrees flap?
So she's asking about 50 degrees of flap. Am I a fan of that? So every power off 180 is going to be different.
Right.
Okay, the wind's going to be different. The gross weight, usually the same, but for argument's sake, it's a little different. The air density is a little different. Okay, we got all these factors. What I'm trying to give you is some standards, like the middle of the road kind of stuff. And I would suggest to you that the target should be this green line where you leave flap 0, you get your best glide, you wait until here's somewhere to go flaps 50, and you might finish the whole maneuver at flaps 50. My argument is that if you're going, a lot of people, they'll go like power idle flaps 100. Well, you just added so much drag that you're requiring yourself to shorten the maneuver. What's your hurry? Like, don't throw out the drag chute so quick, would be my opinion. So by shooting for flaps 50, that gives you some leeway to say, oh crap, I should have turned sooner, I'm too high. I should have turned sooner, I'm too far. I'm just gonna leave the flaps at 50 and I'll make it. You know, or, oh, this is looking pretty good, but I'm a little high, I'm gonna go flaps 90. Like, it gives you wiggle room one way or the other. Now, of course, it's better, if you had to err one side or the other, it's better to be a little high and fast than it is to be a little low and slow. Because if you're low and slow, you're screwed. We have no power, okay? But I'm purposely in this meeting pushing you guys towards the closer and the farther technique because I think that's what you need. Because what I'm seeing is you're too wide on downwind and you're making your turn too close to the threshold. So, all right. My last suggestion related to this, actually let me look at my notes. I gave you the numbers to know if you're doing it right. Okay. My last suggestion on my list related to this is I think you guys are missing an opportunity. Well, let me back up. Another good way to think of this is in two different segments. And the airplane flying handbook calls these key positions. When I learned to fly, we called it high key, low key, but it doesn't matter. But there's a key position here, and there's a key position here. Think of a key position as an altitude and a physical, like longitude, latitude position over the ground, and an energy state. If you hit, well, actually, yeah, energy state here too. Because if you start this maneuver at the wrong airspeed, you're screwed. So you guys are pretty good about it here. You know, fly your downwind, get your checklist done, all that stuff. You got cleared for your short approach, or you're at a non-towered airport. Like, usually your setup's pretty good as far as your energy state. But just realize 5 or 10 knots one way or the other could really mess you up. So make sure you're at the proper altitude, the proper energy state, and the proper distance here when you start. That's your first key position. This is your second key position. I'm hesitant to give you an exact number, but it's somewhere between 200 and 300 feet AGL on final approach with some flaps, either 50 or 100% on the SR20, and the proper energy to hold your best glide until it's time to round out and flare. Drain the energy out and touch down at the appropriate point. Okay? So that's this key position. What you do between here and here determines success or failure, correct? What I was about to say is I think you guys are missing an opportunity when you're at a towered airport like Goodyear and you ask for a short approach and they don't give it to you because they can't. And you're like, I really wanted to practice power off 180s today, but we just can't get any short approaches. This sucks. Okay, I don't disagree with that, but there's still something you can practice. Get good at getting to this point. Because the most difficult part of this maneuver is from here to here, in my opinion. And by difficult, I mean that's when you're fine-tuning all these variables that are different every time. So even with a perfect setup, I don't really know what it's going to look like from here to here until we get there, kind of thing. So what I'm suggesting to all of you, no matter what kind of airplane, anyone watches this video, anything, figure out what these key positions are for your airplane. And when you're not able to do a short approach, fly a normal pattern, maybe you're on the black line, and get yourself to this key position, and then pull the power to idle and practice the last segment. Just curious, by a show of hands, have any of your instructors done that? So this is a new idea, right? Well, it's the punchline for my presentation. If nothing else I said helps you today, I hope that right there increases efficiency and effectiveness of your training. Because we all know how many power off 180s it takes to get good at this thing. And if you can practice the last part, then I think you'll be in a good position. In the SR20, I will suggest to you that depending on where your touchdown point is, it's 3 or 4 white lights on the PAPI here at Goodyear and flaps at least 50%. Okay? Put yourself in that position, pull the power to idle, and figure out where that key position is. Again, by reference to the runway. So whether you end up at Gila Bend or Deer Valley or Buckeye, it doesn't matter. You can do it by looking at the runway. You don't need the other landmarks to help you, okay?
Do you have any other suggestions on what to look for to determine whether you're too high or low throughout the approach?
Do I have any other suggestions of what to look for to determine if you're too high or too low? My suggestion, I will repeat what I said about energy management. It's all about energy management, which includes drag management. And it's kind of like, let me make an analogy. I don't know how many of you have taught someone else how to drive a car. You want to talk about anxiety. At least in an airplane, I have my own set of controls, okay? Whether you've taught someone or not doesn't matter. You've all been taught how to drive a car. Imagine someone learning to drive a car, and they're very early in their training, and it's their first time on the freeway. And there's this big sweeping left turn. And here's this teenager learning to drive. Mom or dad's in the right seat, hanging on by their fingernails. And the teenager asks an honest question. And I don't want, whoever asked the question, I don't want this coming across wrong. I just want to make a comparison. The question the teenager asks is, hey, Mom or Dad, I see the corner up ahead. How much do I need to turn the wheel? Does anyone here have an answer to that? Is there an answer to that?
Whatever it takes to stay on.
The answer is whatever it takes. Okay? It's not a perfect analogy, but I just want to, because my first answer that comes to mind is you just see it. But I know that's not a good answer. I can't tell someone who's not good at power off 180s to just look out the window and see it. But as an experienced pilot, I just see it. Like I'm the examiner on the check ride, and they pull the power, and they turn here, and we're coming down, and I'm looking out the window, I'm like, man, we got a lot of energy right now. And it takes 20 seconds before they seem to realize it, and now we're long. It's like, okay, I'm not saying you have to be as good as a DPE, but you need to learn to manage your energy. You need to learn what it looks like. Driving the car, it's like, you're not going to give them like, oh, move it 2 inches or 10 degrees, or that's ridiculous. You teach them where to look. You teach them what to look at. You teach them to be smooth. You teach them not to overcorrect. There's all kinds of techniques and things, but at the end of the day, you just got to do it to get good at it. That's why we start at 30 miles an hour in the car first. You don't do less than 1 on the freeway. It takes a lot more finesse, right? Well, the power off 180 is the freeway driving of commercial training. It's the advanced lesson, right? It's all about knowing your airplane, knowing the elements, putting it all together, energy management, drag management. So hopefully the things that I gave you, and I'll just repeat them, twice as close as a normal pattern, constant turn from downwind to final, with about 30 degrees of bank and calm wind. And you can adjust that as needed for crosswind component. End up at a point called a key position where you've got at least 200 or 300 feet straight ahead. Nice and easy.
So there's no point before final, like you shouldn't try and like do like a base turn and like level it out for a second and then turn final, or is it should be constant?
So she just asked or to confirm that there should be no wings level on base. In my experience in the SR20, the standard should be no wings level on base. If you spend any time at all wings level on base, that distance could have been spent giving you a longer final. And when I see you guys going wings level on base, I'm just thinking, man, they could have had such an easier maneuver if they would have just used that distance by bringing the downwind in tighter, okay? Did anything I say today disagree with the ACS or the Airplane Flying Handbook or any other publication? I know the picking pylons could be called a gray area, but based on what it says, I think we're fine with what we talked about, okay? All right, I said that was the last one on my list, but one other one flashed through my head a few minutes ago. What was it? Give me a second. Wasn't the steep turns, power off 180, short field. Such a pet peeve. This is for the instructors, which we only have 1 or 2 in the room, and the future instructors. Please stop doing short field landings to a touch and go. All I'm asking is that you change the name and you call it a spot landing. Because really that's what you're practicing, is a precision spot landing. When you become instructors, you're going to learn about a very powerful and very true thing called the law of primacy, which is the way you first learn something is the way it's best remembered. But it's not just that it's best, that's the FAA definition. Now let me give you my definition from experience. Primacy, AKA the way you first learn something, is also what you will do when you're under pressure. And I don't know if you guys realize this yet, but that includes check rides. The FAA has made it clear that when we're evaluating a short field landing on a private or a commercial check ride, it is to a full stop. The FAA needs to see you land that airplane properly and come to a stop. Whether it's a full stop taxi back or whether it's a stop and go, they don't care. But we come to a stop. You guys have what's called negative learning when you do a short field landing to a touch and go. No, that's not a short field landing. It's a precision spot landing, okay? I just call it a spot landing. So, somewhere in your training, what I recommend, and I don't know how your syllabus is written, but what I recommend instructors is first teach all the elements, teach someone how to manage their energy on final, teach them how to drain the energy out in the flare, touch down at a nice high pitch angle. If you hear the stall horn, that's a great indication that you drain the energy out right before you touch down, and use the brakes and come to a stop. That's a short field landing. Teach that first to get the primacy of what a short field landing looks like. Then say, you know what? The most difficult part of the short field landing is the last 10 seconds. So we're going to do that over and over and over with touch and goes because it's efficient. Okay, I get that. It's fine. I'm not against touch and goes during training. But we're going to call it a spot landing. And we're going to practice the last 20 seconds of this precision landing over and over and over and over, so that when you're really good at a spot landing, now we'll go back to requesting stop and goes or full stop taxi backs, and we'll call it a short field again. I know some of you might be saying, Jim, what do you care? You're just changing what it's called. I'm telling you it's important. Please trust me. Mentally, too many people on a check ride do a beautiful job on everything, and then they're on the ground, and I hear simulated braking. I'm not allowed to help them. Usually, my job is to control the scenario. So usually I'm just like, this is real. It's a check ride. I don't want to hear simulated braking on a short field landing. But they go back to the primacy. right? It doesn't matter how much I talk about this in the pre-flight briefing. It's the primacy thing. So please, instructors and future instructors, teach it that a short field landing is always to a full stop. And if you're not able or in a position that you want to do a full stop, that's fine. Just call it a spot landing. That's all I'm saying. Fair enough? All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you for being here. We're done.